Hello bookish friends, my name is Gail and I am the Fiction Bookworm. So today I have a special guest. Come here, buddy. Oh, up. As soon as he saw me get the camera out, he wanted to be in the show. So this is Nikki. Today I'm doing my January wrap up and Bookopoly challenge update. I'm really excited to be finished with the first month. I'm really happy with how I did, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as I also place my board pieces. And additionally, I have another book challenge that I'm working on. Actually, I have a few, as you saw in my video. This is one I haven't talked about yet because it's not in my planner. And this is the Once Upon a Book Club 40 book challenge that they included with their New Year's Eve box that I purchased. And so I have a book that I can scratch off on this as well this month too. Ideally, I suppose I should have at least, closer to 4. I haven't really been working on this challenge at all, so hopefully I'll do better other months. All right. So I thought I'd start by telling you how I did with Bookopoly. My total number of books read this month, or I should say finished this month, are 7. And I have 2 that I started, and actually 3 that I'm currently reading right now that I've started but haven't finished. That will be in my February numbers. So 7 for January. I'm really happy with that number, especially because the last week and a half of the month I've been dealing with a lot of health issues, which has made it difficult for me to read. I've been having a harder time coming home from work and having the energy to read rather than just, veg out with a DVD or something like that. I have, in other news, finished season 2 of Heartland on Netflix. That's one of my favorite binge shows, and also Grace and Frankie on Netflix. So that's taken up some of my reading time. So my books that I have finished this month, I've talked about a couple of them already, I think. I've talked about The Mischief of the Mistletoe, which was one I was reading in December. I technically finished it in January. I finished Shelter Mountain by Robin Carr, which was an audiobook. That one I read. That's the second book in the Virgin River series. I finished 2 advanced reader copies, which I will be talking about in a separate video in new books for February. So stay tuned for that video. I'm not going to talk about those 2 today. My book club read A Woman Is No Man, and I finished that one. That one was really good. I finished another Robin Carr book, which is a second book in her Colorado series called Any Day Now. That was an audiobook that I listened to, which I definitely enjoyed. And then finally, the last book that I finished this month was a reread. It is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. And it came out on sale for the ebook reader, and I have the print copy, so bought the e-reader copy, and that was my my sort of fun comfort read. As I've talked about reading as self-care and the importance of comfort reads, The Kiss Quotient was my 3rd time reading that book. It's definitely a comfort read for me, something that I can just get lost in the story and forget about, the struggles of life. So that's been really important for me this month with health issues. I've started a grief group, and so it's just been a really difficult month. So, okay, so since I read 7 books, that would allow me 7 spaces on the board, but I also had talked to you about the going to jail. And so the terms of the jail, the book jail, was that if I bought, for every 2 books that I purchased this month and did not read, I would have to remove one of my books from the board. So rather than putting down 7 pieces on the board, I bought a total of 2, 4, 6, 8 books this month. Now, of those books, though, I read The Kiss Quotient. Oh, I forgot, there was another novella that I purchased called Fake Girlfriend for Chinese New Year. That was another just really light read. That one I read as well. That was a small one. And I've started 2 of the books but didn't finish them. But I also purchased both of them a little later in the month. So I'm going to give myself credit for starting them. I do plan to finish them. I'm really just kind of, I think I'm about 1/3 of the way through one of them, The House on Trad Street by Karen White. And I'm maybe only 10% of the way through The Family Gathering, which is the 3rd book in Robin Carr's Colorado series. But I'm actively listening to that today. So those 2 I'm going to give credit for. So that means I have 1, 2, 3, 4 books that I have purchased but not read. And that means I have to subtract 2 books off of my, so 2 books off of my 7. And I also had decided that I wasn't going to give myself pieces for the first 2 books that I finished in January, because I finished them like January 2nd and 3rd. I read most of them in December. So I'm going to give myself just 3 pieces on the board right now. So I'm giving myself, let's see. I'm giving myself a piece for The Kiss Quotient, which is a romance. I'm giving myself a piece for Any Day Now, which I'm also going to categorize as a romance. And then I'm giving myself a piece for A Woman Is No Man, which is literary fiction. So now I've got some pieces on my board. You can see here, book number 3 is literary fiction, and all the way around on the romance side, I've got 2 pieces. So my cards for this month were Get Out of Jail Free, and I actually just decided to keep that one for now and save it for another month where I don't have so many pieces, if that happens. If I don't have books, if I have books that I really want to put on the board, I'm just going to save that one for now because I don't need it. I think I'm okay. I'm happy with putting 3 pieces on the board. And then my other card was participate in a book club online or face-to-face. And I did do that. I read A Woman Is No Man for my book club. And that was a really good book, really good discussion. So let's, oh, and then the other book, the other thing that I have here is on this reading challenge. One of the spaces is a book narrated by a child. You can see maybe that right there. A Woman Is No Man was a book narrated by a child. In fact, it had 2 narrators, which is a mother and a daughter. And so the daughter is in high school. Okay, so there I have scratched off my piece. So I thought I'd talk about some of the books that I read. Just kind of briefly to talk about Shelter Mountain, because I don't think I've talked about that one before. I've told you a little bit about the Virgin River series. It's on Netflix. The series covers what I would call the first half of the first book, called Virgin River, but there is a plot from the second book, Shelter Mountain, that they kind of have started bringing forward a little bit into the TV show, even though that plot isn't introduced until the second book. The characters, that are involved. The main characters in Shelter Mountain are already in the TV show, so I thought that was kind of interesting. So Shelter Mountain is the story of Paige and Preacher. And so Preacher is like the cook for Jack's Bar and Restaurant. And Paige is a woman who has been in a domestic abuse situation and has run away from her husband. I think that's probably it's pretty obvious in the book, and in the TV show you kind of get that impression as well, what's already happened. And so, not to give too many spoilers, but that's really what their story is about trying to form a relationship when you have a lot of baggage. It was a good story. One thing about the Virgin River series is things always carry on. So we learn more about Mel and Jack as we read through that story, because their story continues. We get some introductions to some other new characters that are coming in book 3, and see a little bit of foreshadowing of their story. So it's just kind of a fun, relaxing listen for me. I enjoy going to Virgin River and just spending time there. So that was a fun book to reread. It's been a while since I'd read it, probably more than 10 years ago. Then the next book that I finished this month, after the advanced reader copies that I'm not going to talk about, is A Woman Is No Man by Etaf Rum. And so I actually ended up listening to this one, even though I have the book. I ended up listening to it, which was a really good listen. There are 3 point of view characters in this novel. The main 2 are a mother and daughter. And they had 3 different narrators on the audio, which I really liked, really appreciated. Actually, in both storylines, really, both the mother and the daughter are really both children when the book opens. So the daughter is a teenager. She's in high school. As she's narrating her part of the story, the mother, I think, is like 17 when the book opens, and we kind of see her grow up, although not even really that much in the course of the story. The mother has died, which is not a spoiler as part of the story. When we meet Dea, we know that her mother has died. Actually, both her parents have died, and she's an orphan. Well, not an orphan. She's not without any family. She's being raised by her grandparents. But her parents have both, passed. And so, she's struggling with their memory. She's struggling with the cultural differences. This is a story of a Palestinian family. The grandparents were forced, because of wars, into living in, they were refugees, and so they lived in a refugee camp when they were young and newly married and had very small children. And then they were able to come to the United States. But they live as though they very much don't want to be in the United States, that they are Palestinian and they don't want to change. Now, the children, of course, are a little different. So their oldest son, they go to Palestine to try and find him a bride. And that is Ezra, who is the mother in the story. And she, has really no choice in, getting into this arranged marriage and going to the United States. And she's very isolated. They keep her very isolated. She doesn't speak English. She doesn't know how to get around the city. She really just stays at home, takes care of the house, cooks for her husband. She very quickly becomes pregnant and a mother. She has 4 children. I think 4 or 3. Anyway, so she has all daughters, which is in this culture a burden on the family to have daughters, because daughters are going to go away and become part of another family, whereas sons are there forever to take care of the parents. Her husband is under a lot of pressure, being the oldest son. He really has to take care of the family. They have a family business, then they start another one. He runs all the family businesses. He pays for his younger siblings to go to college. He helps support his parents. He has his own new little family of his own who live in the basement of his parents' house. So there is a lot of pressure on him. And he and Ezra never really develop, even though Ezra really wants to love him and works at loving him, he kind of falls back into traditional patterns of being very domineering, being abusive, physically abusive, and Dea has grown up. She was very small when her parents both died, and so she's kind of grown up in ignorance of a lot of that, but at the same time, she's being raised by her grandparents who don't want her to be American. I think when Ezra first comes to the United States, she's a very traditional Muslim. She wears head covering, but her husband is a little bit embarrassed by that because he realizes that people look at them strangely in America for that, and he doesn't want to stand out or be different. So he's assimilated in some senses to American culture, but not in others, when it comes to what his marriage is like. And what his responsibilities are to his family. And then Dea as well, she really decides she wants to not have an arranged marriage and not follow in that cycle, and she wants to go to college. So she's trying to fight against all of this Palestinian culture that she is being forced to live with. So it's a very powerful story. It's in some ways different than some of the immigrant stories that I have read, especially Muslim immigrant stories, because a lot of the ones that I've read lately, like Aisha at Last, I feel like they really are working at striking a balance between living with Western culture and living with their family culture and their Muslim culture. Whereas in this story, we see, I think, a lot more of the attempts to work out that balance. And it's not being worked out well. So it's a bit of a hard story to read, but still good. I found it very compelling. I actually read it in about 2 days, or I should say listened to it in about 2 days, because I thought it was very compelling. So I do highly recommend it. I think it's got a lot of buzz, and I think it's well deserved. I don't think it's totally representative, though, of what Muslim Americans are like. It seems a little more, I think that there's probably different kinds of treatments of how you feel about the new country that you're living in. And this is an Own Voices novel, but at the same time, it's definitely not representative of all Muslim Americans. I think that's an important thing to note. So the next book I'll talk about is another one by Robin Carr called Any Day Now. And this is the second book in our Colorado series. Sullivan's Crossing is the name of the series. I keep calling it the Colorado series, but it's called Sullivan's Crossing. And so what I really liked about it is the first book is about a woman named Maggie, who's Maggie Sullivan. Her dad owns this like campsite kind of place in the Rocky Mountains on the Rocky Mountain hiking trail. And so she meets her husband in book 1, when he's hiking along the trail following the death of his wife is kind of an attempt to try and deal with his grief. So this is the second book, and Maggie's husband is Cal, and I think it's for California. So his family is kind of this weird sort of hippie family. His dad is actually bipolar, and so they moved around a lot and didn't always go to school and lived in a school bus or something like that. When all of the kids, I think they have 4 kids, maybe, I think 4 kids. Anyway, so I think this series is mostly following that family and their kids. So Cal settles in Sullivan's Crossing because Maggie is there, and they really like living there. And so in the second book, Cal's sister Sierra comes to visit. She is out of rehab for alcoholism, and she is dealing with life as an alcoholic who is trying to not partake. You know, we see her going to AA and trying to make up for past wrongs. She has a situation where she was out of it one night and this guy drove her home and he hit a bicyclist. So that's one of the situations she has to deal with. She's trying to deal with how does she kind of go on with life after she's sort of ruined her life with alcohol and start over. And so that's basically the main plot of the story. You know, she meets, eventually about, I don't know, maybe halfway through the story, she meets a guy. They fall in love. We see more people in the Sullivan's Crossing world. We get to meet some other characters. So we meet a little bit more of Cal and Sierra's family. We see Cal and Sierra having a baby. Yeah, so it's a very similar to Virgin River, you know, it's just kind of people and their lives and, you know, their struggles and how they get through each day, you know, which is sometimes hard if you have something going on. Getting through each day is just the best you can do. So, yeah, I liked it. I've already started book 3, so I'm continuing on in the series and the life of the people in Sullivan's Crossing. So that is my wrap up for January. I felt like I didn't have a lot to talk about book-wise, but I still spent quite a bit of time. So I hope that you enjoyed it. My next video will be my new releases in February. I have 2 great new releases to share with you, and one that I could not finish. So I will talk about those in my next video, and I hope that you will look forward to that. So thanks for watching. Give me a like, give me a follow on the social medias. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what you read this month and what you recommend, because one of my challenges on here is a book recommended by a friend. So I'd love to hear your recommendations. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye.